masochism, gratification from being subjected to pain or humiliation, and sadism, gratification from the infliction of pain or humiliation on others. These two words are easy to confuse, and it's not hard to understand why. Most people, most sane people, don't consider either of these a factor in their lives, and thus they use them interchangeably with little regard for their meaning. But I am not a sane person. I've already been through the hell that is making Marble Blast levels, but for some reason, after 2 years, I've come back. And this time, I'm not just a masochist, I'm a sadist as well. Because I want all of you to experience the pain of playing my levels, just as I suffer while making them. It's your choice whether you subject yourself to this video, but I know you want to. I know you do. This is a sequel that we've needed for a long time. So, shall we begin? You guys already know what the deal with the Marble Blast series is, but if you're unfortunate enough to be new around here, I am so sorry that I subjected you to my insane, borderline psychopathic rambling for a full minute. That is a terrible, but oddly fitting introduction to my channel. Whereas last time I ported an already existing level from a different game into PlatinumQuest, this time I decided to challenge myself by creating an entire level all on my own. Well, to a certain extent, but we'll get to that. And while I'm talking about my level building process, I would highly recommend you all download PlatinumQuest and play it for yourself, as I've sunk hours into this game across several years. The fact that I'm doing this again should be enough justification of its quality. I'd also be incredibly grateful if you joined my Discord server and optionally donated to my Ko-fi if you want to be part of my future content. But all that aside, let's at long last jump into the deep end and see what horrors I had in store for me this time. Before I could even get started making anything tangible, I needed an idea for my new level. The foundation was already laid. I wanted to torture the people that play it, but there needed to be a theme that would truly sell that concept and hide my true intentions to those unfortunate enough not to watch this video. It did not take me long at all to figure out exactly what I wanted to make. So do you guys remember those marble mazes from your childhood? The ones made of plastic where there's a metal ball that you roll around by tilting the maze? Well, since you control a marble in this very game, I could build the maze and then make it tilt on its own. Not only to be accurate to real life marble mazes, but also to frustrate players. It was the perfect storm of ingenuity, so I just had to pursue this project and bring this into fruition. Now, I was incredibly rusty from the long period of time between the first level I made and now, so the first thing I did was start asking around the PlatinumQuest community to see if the automatic tilting thing I had in mind was even remotely possible, all while keeping my level's overall purpose a secret. You may remember from my previous venture into making a level for PlatinumQuest the terminology of interiors and shapes being static and dynamic models respectively. I have to amend these definitions, as the only real advantage a dynamic model has over a static one, which concerns me, is support for transparency and the ability to add animations and control the camera's behavior. It turns out that both interiors and shapes are fully controllable inside the in-game level editor as individual objects, and to make them do things, they can be parented to other entities, the most important to me being path nodes. These are used to construct paths that other entities and objects can travel along, encompassing position, rotation, and scale. My immediate thought was to use these nodes to control the rotation of all the level geometry objects at once. The nodes I placed would be set to have control over rotation only, and would just need to describe the most extreme angles the level would need to take on, as they handle smooth movement between their values effortlessly with just a single checkbox. So the first thing I did was open the in-game level editor, spawn in one of the default interiors, and set it loose on a very simple seesaw-like path. And there you have it. It was that simple. If you've gotten to this point in the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you recognize that I just lied to you. Marble Blast is never that simple. You see this weird bouncing that the marble is doing while the platform is standing still? And look at this, it's even slipping through the floor of the interior. How does this happen? Well, that's another easy answer. PlatinumQuest is a mod of Marble Blast Gold, an early 2000s game running on the Torque engine. Most of you remember this, but here's the key takeaway. That Torque engine is old, and the people that worked on it at the time did not have the foresight to add support for accurate collisions with rotating objects. This meant that my idea to make a moving marble maze in PlatinumQuest was well and truly impossible. Just kidding, I lied again. For a short while, I really did think this was impossible and was seriously considering purchasing Marble It Up, PlatinumQuest's supposedly superior successor. But I am nothing if not stubborn. I was going to find a way to make this work. And so I came up with a second way I could potentially create the tilting effect. I would use gravity triggers. Triggers in PlatinumQuest are like most triggers you've seen in other video games. Large invisible boxes that react when in contact with something. And just like most other entities, they could be placed on path nodes and moved over time. Gravity triggers, though, have the added benefit of changing the gravity of the player instantaneously. Now, I did try placing a single gravity trigger and using nodes to rotate it in place, yet that was a similarly unsuccessful venture. The gravity you specify is not relative to the trigger's rotation. It is an absolute value. Knowing this, I had to expand upon the idea in the only way that made sense to me. I would create a conveyor belt of path node entities away from the playable area of the level, and for each of these points, I would place a gravity trigger with a different gravity value. As the level is played, each successive trigger would be flown over the level, activating whenever they made contact with the marble and essentially simulating smooth gravity changes. Additionally, I could increase the fidelity of the transitions by adding more nodes and triggers. So based on this diagram, can you guess how well this worked? Go on, guess. If you said not well, congratulations, you're too smart for this video. There is a small stutter whenever a trigger changes gravity, as if the game needs to reset gravity before adopting the new value. And this stutter only gets more prominent the faster the triggers are flown over the level and the smaller the gravity changes are. Not to mention that this way of using gravity triggers and path nodes has an entity efficiency of O2n, which is not ideal. We need at most ON+1 complexity to keep the game at a smooth frame rate. Wait, what am I doing talking about big O notation in a video about Marble Blast? Safe to say, I was in an absolute nightmare, as I couldn't find a way to get gravity to change smoothly using any of the available tools in the game's level editor. This was the point where I desperately needed all the help I could get, and I seriously owe it to the PlatinumQuest community. This Discord server is full of complete nutjobs that will stop at nothing to ensure these projects of mine get finished, no matter their purpose. Especially since these guys deal with a game that is being held together by boards and nails affixed to broken glass almost every waking moment of their lives. They suggested that I make use of TalkScript to solve this unique problem, a custom programming language that was made exclusively for the Talk engine. It's most similar to the likes of Unity's C# and Godot's GD script, but documentation for it is incredibly sparse due to its age. What I definitely know is that custom code can be included at the top of mission files, and I was already technically doing this when I made my first level in order to get the shapes I created to not affect the camera. But this time I needed to write code that would actively affect the way the level is played. And spoiler alert, this isn't my code. I am not insane enough to familiarize myself with TalkScript just to handle gravity, so my following explanation of the code will be heavily abbreviated and of questionable accuracy. Every client frame, the game gets the rotation of a marker object I've created, named gravity direction, converts it to an orthogonal vector, and sets the player's gravity to that. Why that second step is required, I don't know. Either way, I finally had automatically changing gravity working in my level. Now I could start building the geometry, and you know what that means, it's Blender time. Help me. Before I explain how I went about making the geometry, I just want to make it clear that I still recommend using Blender over Talk Constructor. Having way too many controls and options is much better than using an extremely ancient piece of software that breaks if you dare undo something. I might create a tutorial for making a level like this, since I can't find any for some reason, but only if you guys want it in the comments, so get busy typing if that's up your alley. By this time, I had drawn up a rough sketch of how I would like the level to look from overhead, and I immediately noticed a problem. This level would have to make use of a lot of geometry, and certain pieces of it would be identical to other pieces. If I ever had to go back and change something, I might have to perform those changes hundreds of times, and that simply wasn't acceptable. Thankfully, Blender had my back, for once. By pressing Alt-D with an object selected, a linked duplicate is created, where editing the duplicate affects the parent and vice versa. Using this principle, I would keep the parents in one collection, focusing on making their measures look just right, and move all the children into another collection, rotating and moving them into place, ready to be exported. This meant that building the blocks of the maze was quite easy, albeit time-consuming. To further sell the illusion that this is a real marble maze, I also constructed a wooden rim that goes around the edges of the maze, holding the blocks in place, and a glass dome extending from the rim that keeps the marble contained inside. It might look like a snow globe from a distance, but no, this is definitely a marble maze. It's like this so a player is able to make use of the super jump and gyrocopter power-ups without hitting the roof. And now for the texturing, of which I would be doing a lot. The texture selection in PlatinumQuest is quite limited, even when you're aware that it has assets assets from 4 different Marble Blast games, so I got a bunch of CC0 licensed textures from various websites. The only exception was this wooden rim texture, which comes from the game because it worked so well. For each of the other textures though, I had to edit them in Paint.net to produce the looks I wanted, even using some upscaling software to create a nicer looking glass shine. But unbeknownst to you, I just glossed over UV unwrapping without you even realizing. So let's talk about that. It sucks! Sure, I made use of Blender's auto unwrapping feature, but I had to do a lot of adjustments after the fact to make sure the textures were facing the right way and use the whole space. I've learned over the course of building this level that it is actually possible to snap UV vertices by pixel and offset a UV island to the position of the 2D cursor, things that would have been very helpful when I made my Ballistic NG mod. I also wanted to add some depth to my textures because, as many of us have already figured out, there's no baked or simulated shadows in Torque, and this tightly packed maze would be very hard to navigate without some shading. What I ended up doing was putting a whole bunch of blocks together and baking their ambient occlusion in Blender. From that, I could estimate the appropriate gradient and amount of shading, and include it in separate textures which I assigned to the block faces that would have been included in Blender. We're almost there, but there's just one tiny problem. The whole maze looks the same! How are you able to find your way around this level if you can't tell where you are in space? This would be an easy fix if it weren't for the fact that I'm using linked duplicates, so if I change any textures, they'll change every other copy as well, right? Actually, no. Each of an object's texture slots have 2 possible links, data or object. Data being the default and referring to the shared mesh being used between parents and their children. If you select object instead, the textures you use will only apply to the child object, which is exactly what I needed, and I colored the entire maze using this feature. Wow, look at all this. It's finished. The geometry's finally finished. Time to export it and see it in game. You've got to be kidding me. The texture slot link support for the DIF add-on is broken. No, scratch that. It's broken in Blender. I was in talks with the developer of this add-on. He can't figure out what's going on. Blender refuses to point to object-specific textures during a Python-based export. At least that's what I think is happening. So guess what? We have to go down the export train one more time. Export the interior as an FBX, re-import it into a new project, and now export it as a DIF. Oh, that actually wasn't so bad. No 2.79 shenanigans. Whew. Thank goodness. So yeah, we're done, basically. I mean, of course I was using the in-game level editor the whole time to place the path nodes required for the gravity changes, the gems and the power-ups that would need to be collected, and do all my testing, but all that matters is that it's finished. And there's plenty of other things that I glossed over, but this video structure is pretty good as is, and I've been delaying this for way too long. It's time I gave you guys something to prove I'm still alive, despite how unstable I am. Now, unlike last time where I listed off all of the different modes my previous level was compatible with, this one is a single contained experience, as classic as a level can get. All you'll be doing is collecting gems and fighting the person that's moving the maze around. It's an eternal question of mine whether you'll be so kind as to try out my level or not, especially after my psychopathic tirade at the beginning, but even if you don't, please download PlatinumQuest and give it a shot. I cannot stress that enough. It is honestly an amazing game with tons of replayability, and me coming back to it after 2 years should be evidence enough. And here's a fun fact, my old level is featured in online Pack 8. That's freaking awesome! Regardless, I want to hear from you guys. What did you think of my video? Was there something I discussed that was helpful to you? Should I make more content like this? Am I getting dangerously close to being admitted to a psychiatric ward? Leave your answers in the comments below, and pay a visit to my Discord server. I've got some dedicated fans over there who are in dire need of others to indoctrinate. That's gonna be all for now, until I come back with another crazy story to tell, and also a list of all the people I've terrorized. I'm gonna be taking notes. So thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I will see you all next time.